For more on China's surge in COVID cases, we turn to Dr. Chris Byrer. He's director of the Duke University Global Health Institute. And Lynette Ong. She's a professor of political science at the University of Toronto, where she focuses on China. Her latest book is Outsourcing Repression: Everyday State Power in Contemporary China. And we welcome both of you in a very deadly, life-costing set of decisions. Professor Ong, what's your understanding of why the government stuck with this policy for so long, which is turning out to be leading to so many deaths?
So on your question, Judy, about why the vaccination rate in China is so low, even though they have got 3 years to prepare for it. So this has been, zero COVID has been Xi Jinping's signature policy right from day one. And a year into it, I think COVID has ceased to become a public health issue. It has really become a political issue, an issue that has allowed President Xi to go out there to really showcase the superiority of the China's governance model in protecting its people's lives, often pointing to 1 million deaths in the United States, saying that the failure of Western democracies in protecting lives. And it is also used to control people's movement leading up to the 20th Party Congress. So it's really become more political than public health issue, which is why I think vaccination has been very low on the priority. And in the last 6 weeks or so, there has been extraordinary protests throughout major cities in China, even asking President Xi to step down. And given intense pressure from all sides, President Xi has decided to do this 180 degrees reversal, which has caught hospitals unprepared.
And does the public understand what's going on here, that their government has made these decisions that are now leading to this COVID massive crisis?
I think people very much understand what is going on, even though there's a lot of lack of transparency. There's no data about COVID infection, about mortality rate, or hospital, crowded, how crowded it is. People are, speculating in the dark, but I think people know that situation is pretty dire, and they are taking really things into their own hands. Some of them are going to the black market, and some of them are trying to secure over-the-counter painkillers and medicines from Hong Kong and Macau. But things are really not looking good at the moment.
And is blame now falling on the shoulders of the Xi Jinping regime?
That is an interesting question. I think we have to wait and see whether we are going to see a scapegoat that is going to be attributed the blame to. But in all likelihood, I think the Chinese Communist Party, its legitimacy, is really going to suffer. Right, because public trust has been so much eroded in the last couple of weeks with the protests, as well as the 180 degrees reversal, the reversal in rhetoric, telling people that COVID is really dangerous, and overnight saying that there's nothing to be worried about. I think Chinese people is not one to be easily fooled.
Dr. Byrer, what do we see in the weeks and the months to come in China in terms of COVID? What should we expect?
Well, I'm afraid we expect many more cases. Unfortunately, considerably more loss of life because people have not been immunized with high efficacy vaccines. There's a UK estimate out that perhaps 5,000 deaths a day are already occurring. There could be considerably more than that coming. And the catch-up of immunization is going to take longer than it would in other settings, because WHO has mandated that these low efficacy Chinese vaccines really require at least 3 doses. So you have to, it's not just 2 doses, but also a boost. And catching up with boosting is very challenging, and it takes time, as we know from the US.
And finally, Professor Ong, who among the Chinese population is going to be suffering the most? You mentioned some people do have access to information, to medicine on the black market, but who mainly is going to suffer?
I think people in the rural areas, because the distribution of public health is very uneven. For a long time, there has been neglect on the health system in the countryside. ICU beds are in shortage in China in general, but particularly acute in rural areas. So, everything else being equal, we are likely to see more casualties in rural China, unfortunately.
Well, it is such a tragic situation on so many levels. Professor Lynette Ong at the University of Toronto and Dr. Chris Byrer at the Duke University Global Health Institute. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.